Hello paddlers, welcome back to my channel. I received an email and who was it from? Mark. He was called Mark. Yeah, Mark. Sorry. Should have checked my email first to get the guy's name. Yeah, Mark. And he says to us, one of my wrists hurt me when I'm paddling. Is there anything that is there anything I suggest, like wearing some sort of wrist brace or bandage or something like that? Well, I answered the email, obviously. I give him some answers, but I said I'd make a video because surprisingly, that is a fantastic question, which I know from personal experience, right? A lot of people, it happens to a lot of people, and there are a plethora of reasons why some people, right, in fact most paddlers, when they're first starting out, so to speak, because this happened to me over 20 years ago before I stopped and I got back into it. I've been re-paddling about 12 months, something like that, about a year now. Right, because I sort of quit for about, I had about 20-year layoff and then started again last year. But anyway, no, it happened to me, and I spoke to an expert, and this guy went through all this stuff. But you'll actually be surprised, and I can understand his reaction, Mike's reaction, thinking, do I just need like a wrist brace or something like that? Well, like I said, there are a plethora, as in plenty, of reasons why your wrist might be hurting you. It could be one wrist, could be both wrists, but more than likely it's just the one wrist, and I'll explain why. But sometimes it's both. But anyway, but there can be many reasons why. Now, let's just assume, before I go into stuff, let's just assume you haven't recently, or within the last 5 years, let's say, broken your wrist. Alright? Because even if you broke your wrist 5 years ago, you have to think you've got a solid wrist, and then you break it, and then even when it heals, it's still not as strong as it was at the beginning. So that could be a reason. But let's just assume you haven't recently or in the past broken your wrist, because like I said, it's usually one of the other reasons. And believe it or not, this will surprise you, it can have to do with the way you sit in a kayak, the way you move your body in a kayak, the way you paddle in a kayak, the way you hold your paddle in the kayak, and the size of your paddle. Alright, and probably a few more things that I just can't think off the top of my head. All them different things. If your wrist is hurting you, let's just say my right wrist, right? Let's say your right wrist is hurting you. What you need to do is go through all this list and eliminate all the bad things you're doing, and you will find you'll come across it and you'll say, my wrist doesn't hurt anymore. It's because of, like if you had engine trouble, you take it to your mechanic, he doesn't just go, that's your problem. Well, unless it's a great mechanic, they go through different things until they find the problem. Well, there are a lot of reasons why your wrist might be hurting you, and we'll go through them. And seeing as it's all designed with being in your kayak, I'm not going to get my kayak out to make this video, and I'm not going out paddling today, right? But I'll switch camera views. I'll sit on a chair, and I've got like me paddle stick, so to speak, for what I use when I'm on my VR set paddling, you know what I mean, my broom handle. So we'll change camera angles and we'll go through a few things. Okay, right, jump shot. Right then paddlers, I've come indoors. I've put the camera on a wide angle, right, so hopefully you're able to see everything I'm doing, and I'm not just wasting my time here and have to reshoot it all. Right, I've got my paddle. This is what I use for my VR when I'm on my VR headset. Right, wrists. The most likely, right, is you're holding your paddle too tight. This is one of the first things you can check. A lot of people hold the paddles really, really hard when they're paddling, right? And that puts strain on your wrist. When you're paddling, when I'm pushing forward that way, a lot of the time I'm like that. That hand is quite loose, then that hand's loose. Almost till this is in class 1 water, as in steady-ish, fast-moving, slow water, like a river. Right, we're not talking class 2, which is more white water, and class 3 and class 4, which is as rough as hell. This is class 1, smooth river paddling, fast-moving water, or even steady-moving water. And you don't want to be gripping your paddle hard. Just, you know, you don't have to do that. You can hold on to your paddle, but don't grip your paddle hard. That's the last thing you want to do. Right? You just want a light, loose grip. If you're holding your paddle too stiff as you're pushing through the water, you're putting way too much strain on your wrists and also on your shoulders and your hips, believe it or not, but we'll get to all that. So first thing you can try is loosen your grip a little bit on your paddle. Okay, right, now the next thing, moving on perfectly, is the paddle itself. You're probably holding the paddle wrong. Alright, now I don't want to say people are doing things wrong. It's just that I was asked this question and I'm trying to explain it, because I know some people will say, well, I always hold my paddle this way, and who are you to tell me I'm doing it wrong? That ain't what this video is not. I'm saying you're doing that wrong. This video is to help if your wrist is hurting. So please, if anyone else watches this, alright, don't start thinking I'm judging you because you do it different. That I am not trying to do. Nobody should judge you. You can paddle however you want to paddle. If you're happy and comfortable, fine. This is for people who aren't happy and comfortable. So I don't want to offend anybody. Okay, I don't mean to offend anybody. So if I do, I apologise. Okay, right, getting back. Holding the paddle wrong. I see some people holding the paddle in like this. Right, and paddling like that. You know who you are. Right, well, the problem is, I don't know if this camera will show it. If you can, I'll have to do this higher up. If you look at my wrist, right, if I do it that way, look at this wrist. As I paddle there, it's twisted. And so is this one. Right, and that way would be the opposite way. Right, so if you're holding your paddle too narrow as you're paddling like this, you are I'm overemphasizing this so you can see. Right, but you're actually twisting your wrist in the wrong position, right, in an unnatural position, right, unless you're eating lots of cream cakes. Right, so holding your paddle too close and paddling like that, I can actually feel that pulling on my wrist just for this little thing. Now imagine if it was in water and you got the pressure of the water. So yeah, if you're holding your paddle too close, that's bad for your wrist. Also, exactly the same, if you're holding your paddle too wide and you're paddling, once again, you're twisting your wrist in an unnatural position for paddling. Now, the perfect position for holding your paddle, you want to be looking for an L. Basically, somebody points a gun at you and says, put your hands up. You don't put your hands up like that. You don't put your hands up like that. You put your hands up like that. Somebody points a gun and says, put your hands up, you're going to go like that. Okay, and that's where you want to be for paddling. All this wants to be straight. That wants to be straight all the way to your shoulders. So, in fact, if you take your paddle, balance it on your head, and just look at your arms until you get that sort of like L shape, which for me is about there. Right, and that is like, don't have to be perfect, but that is like your perfect paddling position. Right, so then that way you're creating a square. Right, as I hold that paddle there, on my arm going down, my body coming across, and my arm coming this way, and down there, I've created a square within me. If there was an overhead camera, you'd see it better. But for my body, the paddle, my arms, I've like created a square. Remember that, because I'll be coming back to that on another part. And that's roughly where you want your paddle. So if you're watching my wrists now, they're pretty much straight. Okay, so holding your paddle in the correct position is important, so you don't hurt your wrists or your shoulders. Because like I say, you're putting pressure on your wrists, you're putting pressure on you. All you're doing there is using your arms, your wrists, and your shoulders. That way, you're mostly just using your arms, your wrists, well, and your shoulders again. You're not getting it's not efficient, which can lead to your wrist hurting. That can be another reason. Also, while we're dealing with this, a third or the fourth reason, I don't know what we're up to now, can be actually how you paddle. Let's assume you've got your paddle, you're holding your paddle correctly. If you're stretching out to put it in the water and paddle, you're putting more strain right on your wrist and your elbow even. You're straining too far. When paddling, both hands should never be past your head. If both hands are past your head for any reason, that's bad, no matter which side you're at. That means you're paddling inefficiently. I keep saying the word inefficient because if I say the word wrong, people will take offence, and I'm trying not to offend anybody. But you're putting strain on your body, so both hands never want to be past your body. Now at the same time, you don't want your paddle right up here. We're not on we're not on like class 3 white water where you're bending and twisting round rocks and stuff like that. Don't forget, we're trying to deal here with somebody who's hurt the wrist when they're paddling. Okay? Think about as if there's somebody sat in front of you. I'll use the camera because it's on my eye level. Someone sat in front of you. As one hand goes down, your trailing hand, the one coming up, is almost like it's trying to punch an invisible person right in front of you at the nose. And as that one comes round, you get me? So you've got one hand coming to there as that one comes round to there. Okay? You don't want to be having a low paddle stroke like that, because if you have a low paddle stroke, you're putting strain on your wrists and on your shoulders. If you have a high paddle stroke, exactly the same. You want a balanced paddle where you're roughly as if you're trying to punch someone in the nose, or sat right in front of you, so to speak. Okay? Which would basically translate to a nice smooth paddle. And if you looked at it from the side, it would almost look like a propeller. A very slow propeller, but a propeller. Right? As it goes through the water. Right? Now that's another reason that can cause wrist damage, paddling wrong. Also, believe it or not using your body correctly, right? Your upper body and your hips, because when you're paddling efficiently, right, you should be using, not this much, but you should be using your hips, right, in this sort of a motion. I will overemphasize, but as I put my paddle there, I should be twisting around there. I'm overemphasizing, and as I put my paddle there, I should be twisting around that way. So I'm using my full body, which basically, if you see me twisting like that, but that's me overemphasizing it just to show you. But in a more realistic situation, right, if you see me just twisting, like if you've all watched boxing, even if you've never boxed, a boxer don't box like that. Alright? You twist into your punch. right? You twist your hip, twist your body, and that's for efficiency and to deliver more power. And the power side helps you with your paddle. So you want to be twisting your hips slightly, right? So you're twisting and you're twisting back again. You're twisting. It's a bit hard to, I could have done this actually on the water and it would have been much easier, but the problem is with the wind and stuff like that, you might not have heard half the things I was saying, right? But you want to be using your body. If you've got foot pegs in your kayak, it's much easier because you can use your foot pegs to give you a bit of support as well as you're pushing, as you push down on your foot peg. You know what I mean? You know what I mean, exactly. If you've got foot pegs, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Alright, foot rests, foot pegs, whatever you like. Alright, but yeah, you want to be twisting your body slightly. But still, if you look down from the top now, I've still got that square. That square is still there. Alright, and at that side, the square is still there. Even though I've twisted my body slightly, alright, I'm always looking forward, which is something I do forget to do. Sometimes I have got the bad habit of still looking that way a little bit and looking at it. Is a bit of a bad habit you shouldn't do. You should always be looking where you want to go, if you know what I mean. I'm overemphasizing this twist. You don't want to be chubby checker. You don't want to be doing the twist on the water, but it's this sort of motion. And yeah, like I said, I'm overemphasizing it just to show you. All right, but what it'll, if you've never done that before in your life, it will feel strange. But after you paddled a while and you're putting that twist in, you'll see your paddle, it'll be going through the water much easier because you're not just pulling it with your arm. Your body is helping it pull round. Going back to the punch again. You've got a punching bag, you stand in front of it going like that. Within 2 minutes your arm's going to be dropping off and you know the bag's not going to move. But if you put your hip into it, that's a different matter. Right? And that also helps to relieve the stress off your wrists. So that's something else. Right? And it's the same principle for when you're putting your paddle in the water and you're swooping round to spin your boat round. Right? If you just put your paddle there, right, I'm overemphasizing again, but if you just put your paddle there and push, you're putting all strain on your arm and your shoulder. If you put your paddle back, I'm sat on my kayak, I put my paddle back like that and I push the water around. Yeah, your boat will turn, but you're pushing with your shoulder, your elbow, your wrist, and you're putting all strain on it again. But if you've got that square and you turn your body, right, your paddle goes in and you spin the paddle, right, and twist your hip, then you're using your entire torso to move the water, which moves the boat, which moves you, right, and it's taking all the strain off your wrist again. So basically they're the main reasons why in some cases people find the wrist hurt. They could be holding the paddle too tight, they could be paddling wrong, they could be holding the paddle wrong, whether it be too narrow, too long. They could be paddling wrong, as in just putting the paddle in the water like that, right, or stretching the paddle out like that, which is wrong. Inefficient, don't use the word wrong, people will complain. Right? So remember, you're wanting a, I'll overemphasize again because it's hard to see what I'm doing sat on a chair. The twist. In fact, that's roughly how I paddle. Roughly. I don't usually move much more than that. So actually that's about spot on. You're pulling that way, you're pulling that way, you're pulling that way. I'm not lined up because it's a bit hard when you've got no water, because I'm trying to control this stick as well. If your water's there, you think, right, the paddle's in the water, so you know how far you're going, if you know what I mean. You know what I mean. Right, so it's this sort of emotion, and then it's less strain on your wrists, and that one of them reasons. If you go through them, starting with loosen your grip a little bit. I don't mean just paddle like that, or your paddle's gonna fall out of your hand. Just loosen your grip. Don't hold it as if you're dangling off a building. Right, and then try the other. If you happen to paddle like that, and you're happy paddling like that, and I've seen people paddle like that, right? Fine, if you're happy doing it, right? But if you're still getting, at least relax your grip, if now else. At least relax your grip, if now else, and that might help. But if you want to be sure your wrist stops hurting, right? Because it's not just your wrist, it's your elbows, it's your shoulders, it's damage you can cause down the road. It's not a case of, oh, well, I paddle like that and I'm fine, right? Down the way, it can, not will, it can cause problems to your joints because of the force going on your shoulders and your elbows and stuff. Yeah, right. Oh, and there's one more thing that can actually cause wrist problems. Right? If you're not actually sat in your kayak properly, right, or sat on your kayak properly, right, if you're laid back in your kayak practically like that, and you're paddling like that, your wrists are completely 100% in the wrong position, and that's why your wrists are hurting, and you will end up with problems, right? And also, right, that's leaning back. If you're not sat properly, right, we talked about the L. Well, can't get my words out. Your legs and your torso wants to be like that L as well. In fact, the way I'm sat now is pretty damn good, right, on this chair. You want to be sat up straight. Okay, obviously if you've stopped for a break, you can shuffle down, relax, stretch out, stretch forward. But when you're paddling, you want to be sat upright, like you're in like an office chair if you sat in your office or whatever, right? Or driving a long way in a car, you're usually sat up pretty much. Well, actually in a car, usually back a little bit, but you know what I mean. You want to be sat up pretty straight so that when you are paddling, you know what I mean, your spine straight, because the last thing you want to do is damage your bloody spine. But yeah, so all of them things can actually lead to having a bad wrist, your wrist hurting you. So before you run out and get these wrist straps and all like that, like I said, try them different things. I'm not going to go through them all again, but the first one you want to try is just loosen your grip a little bit. Just loosen you can still hold on to it, but don't hold it as tight. Like I say, me personally, I'm practically like that. Practically two fingers half the time. When the water gets a bit rougher, then the two fingers vanish, right, and the full grip comes in, but it's still a loose grip. Right, it's not a rock solid grip. But there you go. I've covered everything now. So basically, go through them different ideas, and one of them, if not a combination, if not all, will stop your wrist from hurting. Dare I say guaranteed? No, I daren't say guaranteed, because I don't know. You never know. In the past, you may have had a wrist injury, right? You might have just fractured your wrist, right? A hairline fracture or something like that. Haven't even realised. You're sort of like, oh, that hurts, right? But you never went to doctors. You never went to hospital. It got better. But the hairline fracture, the aftermath, it could still be a little problem. But that really is sort of like the extreme reason. 9 times out of 10, it'll be one of them reasons I've covered. It'll all be to do with your paddle and your posture and your paddling. Move your body, right? Move your body. Yeah, so the bottom line is, right, try them things, right, and I'll pretty much guarantee it, right, whichever wrist is hurting, because 9 times out of 10 it's usually one or the other, because you grip harder or you've got your wrong position or whatever. But if it's both, fine. But I'll guarantee you one of them things, if not a combination of them things, right, will stop your wrist from hurting. But the best bet is remember that L, right, balance your paddle on your head if you like, right, you don't have to do this, but get that rough L shape with your arms, right, get your comfy position, right, and as you put your paddle in, remember the punch, right, as in yeah, towards you, so to speak, right, and remember your twist, so it's nice, smooth. You're using your hips, you're using your body, right, not just your arms. Okay, so if you're not just using your arms, there's less strain on your wrists. Okay then, paddlers, I'm going to leave it there. And like I said, I thought I'd make this video because it's one of them questions that come along every now and again, and I think it's bloody interesting what the answer is, because like this guy says, what wrist strap do you recommend type thing, what should I do type thing, and you don't need to spend money, you just need to make an adjustment. And I think I mentioned the reason why I understand this a little bit, because I'm sure there's more, and if you've got any more advice, anyone who watches this, leave a comment. I'll be happy to read them, and I'm sure people that read them will be happy to see them for advice. But yeah, like I said, over 20 years ago, I was getting that problem with my left wrist. It was just every time I'd finish paddling, my left wrist was just aching and aching and aching. I wasn't in pain, it was just aching. And we went through a few things. This professional kayaking guy went through a few things, and he's the one who explained to me, and joking apart, if you go on YouTube, you'll find professionals almost saying the same thing as me about how to hold your paddle and stuff. So this guy taught me, he didn't just make it up, he knows what he's talking about holding your paddle. And bottom line is, once I listened to him, everything changed. And then I think it was about 2 years or a year later or something like that when I stopped paddling anyhow, so it didn't really matter. That was about 20 years ago. But yeah, so do them things, right, and your wrist will stop hurting. And you'll also become more efficient at paddling because you'll be using your full body rather than just your hands. Now, all that being said, I'm going to jump right back to the beginning of how I kind of started this by saying I don't mean to offend anybody. If you paddle like that and you're happy, great. Most important thing is being out on the water, enjoying yourselves, right? However you paddle, and if you're happy the way you paddle, that is fine, right? I am not trying to tell people what to do. Well, in a way I am, but I'm not trying to be bossy, so to speak. So if I've offended anyone, I do apologise, but that was not the intent of the video. It's just hard to explain something to somebody without actually saying something's wrong. I can't say that's right and then say, but stop doing it and your wrist might not hurt. It don't work. Okay then, paddlers, I'm sure you understand what I mean. So thanks for watching, and the River Rat will be back on the water again very soon, and depending on the wind or whatever, I might have something else to tell you. Okay then, thanks for watching, and cheers.